Good morning, good people. Brother Charbel here for what is for us the solemnity of St. Francis of Assisi. As you can see in this beautiful stained glass window here at St. John Vianney Seminary at the small chapel. I almost feel overwhelmed of all the things I could say about St. Francis. I equally feel overwhelmed of all the things I could say in regards to who St. Francis was not. He is one of the most beloved saints in the church, and for that reason, sometimes he's misunderstood, sometimes seen as a kind of proto-hippie, frolicking through the woods. Now, don't get me wrong, St. Francis loved creation, as you can see in the Canticle of Preachers. In fact, he loved everything God created. But today I want to focus on one of the last things St. Francis wrote right before his death in 1226. It's called the Testament. And for us Capuchins, we revere it. We hold it up as important. Now, St. Francis didn't want to see it as another rule, but as a kind of broad admonition to his fellow friars. In it, you can see all the things Francis loves. The church, and more specifically, churches, the Holy Eucharist, his own brothers, priests. So you can see that the Testament itself extols the doctrine of the church. But what he begins with is very fascinating. Take a listen. The Lord granted me, Brother Francis, to begin to do penance in this way. While I was in sin, it seemed very bitter to me to see lepers. And the Lord himself led me among them, and I had mercy upon them. And when I left them, that which seemed bitter to me was changed into sweetness of soul and body. So out of all the experiences Francis had, he begins with what? Penance, sin, and his encounter with the lepers. So what can this tell us today? Well, for one, penance, repentance, that is, that transformation of the heart and mind, is both interior but also exterior. That is, it always leads us to the other. It is by its power communitarian. So Francis experienced in himself a kind of disgust and fear of the lepers. But as St. John says, perfect love casts out all fear. Fear is almost the opposite of love. So Francis knew in order to do penance, in order to be transformed from within, in order for that thing that caused him the most fear to become sweet in body and soul, he had to face it. He had to encounter it. And in most of the lives of Francis, not only that, he kisses the very thing he most fears, the very thing that causes him the most anguish. So friends, I invite us all today on this Feast of St. Francis to walk in his shoes. And it was he who followed Christ. And to encounter whatever it is in our lives that causes us anguish and fear. And like Francis, to embrace it, yes, to even kiss it, and enter into that true repentance that leads us to Christ. Thank you, and God bless.